Hunger Games, yeah, 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 Hunger Games. Hello everyone, 'tis me, the Alec Powers, and I just saw the new Hunger Games movie, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and I have a few things to say about it. To start off, here's a little background. I read the first Hunger Games book when it was first published way back in 2008. I went on to read every other book in this series as they were released, and I did the same with the movies. I've been a pretty big fan of this universe for a long time, so when the latest book came out, I was hyped to see what Suzanne Collins had cooked up for us this time around. After reading it, I can honestly say that I thought it was very well written, and it was overall a fantastic read. Collins hasn't lost her touch at all, and if anything, she's become an even better writer than she used to be. That being said though, this video isn't about the book, it's about the movie. At least for the most part, I am going to be bringing up the book a lot. So, what do I think about the movie? Was it a faithful adaptation that hit all the right notes, or was it a Hollywood cash grab without a heart? Let's find out. This is a few things I like and a few things I don't about A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Please like and sub if you enjoy the video. Part 1. Things I liked. Number 1 is that I really enjoyed the set pieces and the overall visual aspects of this movie. The rainbow snakes looked cool, I really liked the school uniforms the Capitol students wore, but more than anything it was very interesting to see what a recently war-torn Capitol looked like. I appreciate that the filmmakers were able to strike a decent balance here. The Capitol still looks very regal and grand, but there's something about it that gives you the sense that you're not seeing it at its prime. Perhaps it's the general dirtiness of some of the buildings or the cranes littering the skyline, but in any case, I appreciate the contrast between the grandiose aura the Capitol has and the sense that it still has a ways to go. Honestly though, I would have liked to see at least a bit more dilapidation. In the book, Coriolanus talks about how rubble had been deliberately left lying around the city, as if to remind the citizens in their short memories of the horrors of the war. I would have liked to see the set designers put more effort into illustrating this. Number 2 is that I really appreciate the way the movie handles the Jabberjay recording scene. In the book, when Coriolanus is recording Sejanus with the bird, he doesn't say anything at all. I kept thinking as I read, Coriolanus, you have to say something like, what you're suggesting is treason, or something like that. Otherwise Dr. Gall might just assume that this recording was made accidentally and it might incriminate you both. When in the book, Coriolanus didn't come under any suspicion because of this, I thought it was a bit unrealistic. I appreciate then how the movie gives Coriolanus the line, I forget exactly what he says, but he says something like, this is treason, Sejanus, or something like that. This makes the whole situation seem much more realistic in my eyes by making it clear that in the recording, Coriolanus isn't just listening to Sejanus, he's opposed to what he's hearing. Number 3 is that I also really like how the movie handled the scene with Lucy becoming suspicious of Coriolanus at the end. In the book, it all seemed so quick and I just didn't buy it. She went from being totally fine to setting up a snake trap for him in a matter of minutes, or at least it felt like that, and it struck me as odd and in need of fleshing out. In the film, I like that we're able to hear the pause that Coriolanus makes after Lucy asks him what he means when he says he's killed 3 people. We can hear how long the pause is and see the concern on her face. The conversation they have in that little building about the guns does wonders at pushing this forward too. Their exchange is oozing with distrust, and it makes the following scene with Lucy turning on Coriolanus and him shooting her seem much more natural. Number 4 is just Lucky Flickerman. I thoroughly enjoyed every second he was on screen, and because of that, I'm glad they gave him so much screen time. He was in the movie a lot more than I expected him to be. He was definitely one of my favorite aspects of the film, and although I don't think the Hunger Games are moral, I'm glad he was able to be the host, and I hope he got to remain the host for many games to come. So that's about all I have to say on what I liked about the movie. And, keep in mind this isn't like a full review or anything, it's just like major things that came to mind. There are other things I liked about the movie, and there are things I disliked about the movie that I'm not going to mention in the next part, but these are just like the main things that came to mind, so just keep that in mind going forward. But with that said, let's move on to the next part of the video. Part 2, things I didn't like. Number 1 is that the pacing was just too fast for me, but that's to be expected of a book-to-movie adaptation. I knew they were going to have to cut some things out, but honestly I'm surprised at how much they did cut. This isn't something I would normally advocate for, but part of me thinks that this film could have benefited from a narration of some kind from Coriolanus. There were just so many things that I feel should have been elaborated on more, and I feel that a little internal monologuing might have helped. Number 2 is just branching off number 1. I'm going to go over some specific things I feel should have been elaborated on more, perhaps with a narration. Hunger. In the book, every single meal and every piece of food has so much focus put on it. Every time Coriolanus gets to eat a meal, you feel so happy for him, and when he decides to skip a meal or has to skip a meal, you really feel the weight of it. Food just seems so much more important in the books. In the movie, they kind of touch on it, but not to the extent I feel they should have. Tigress just mentions that she boils some potatoes for starch and that Coriolanus really should eat them. It hardly gets across how desperate they are. Coriolanus' shirt. In the book, Coriolanus spends so much time worrying about what he's going to wear at the reaping that you find yourself wondering if he's screwed right from the start of the book. But in the movie, he spends like 5 seconds looking around his house, and then Tigress shows up with it. I do appreciate that the writers made a point to have her explain to Coriolanus how she was able to make it, but it just wasn't enough for me. And as I'm writing this point, it feels like a bit of a nitpick, but I'm leaving it anyway. How lost Coriolanus felt after becoming a peacekeeper. In the book, he seemed so broken and helpless. He went on and on about how this was the end of his life and that everything he'd worked for was lost forever. How he'd never achieve anything and might as well either kill himself or accept his fate as a worthless nobody in the districts. In the movie, he just throws out one line about contemplating suicide, but his delivery makes it seem like more of a joke than something he was seriously considering. Arachne Crane's death. In the book, Arachne is said to be taunting her tribute with a sandwich, and that's why she gets her throat slit. And then we hear Snow's inner thoughts about whether he should go to her aid, ultimately really only doing so for the cameras. This scene just seemed a little rushed to me in the movie. It was a missed opportunity to give character development to both Arachne and Coriolanus. I feel like these issues could have been helped somewhat by a narration from Coriolanus, or at least a bit more focus. There are probably more examples I could think of, but I think I'll leave it at that and move on to... Number 3. There were a couple action scenes added into the movie that weren't in the books that I can recall that I really just didn't like. And specifically I'm talking about the scenes that involve the drones and the water. I forget the name of the male tribute from 12 that came with Lucy Gray, but the water smacking into him like that just seemed out of nowhere. It just seemed kind of unnecessary. And when they doubled down on that and had multiple water bottles smash into multiple tributes who were surrounding Lucy Gray, it just seemed gratuitous, honestly. I thought it was downright stupid. I leaned over to my mom who was at the theater with me and I was like, that was stupid, and she agreed. It just seemed like something that the director or some corporate executive, I don't know, wanted in the movie. It didn't seem like something that Suzanne Collins would want to be in the movie. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seemed gratuitous and stupid. I really didn't like the drone water bottle scenes. Lastly, we have number 4. I didn't like how Dean Highbottom's death scene was handled, but here's a twist. I didn't like how it was handled in the movie or the book. In the book, Coriolanus puts rat poison in the morphling bottle, Highbottom uses it, and he dies. That whole part had me thinking, do they not have autopsies in this city? How does he expect to get away with that? After all, by this point in the movie, his cheating antics have already associated him with rat poison. That being said, I assume his thought process was that since Highbottom is a known morphling addict, they probably wouldn't bother to do an autopsy. But it still seems like quite the risk for Coriolanus to take, given that he's just been given everything he's ever wanted and therefore has a ton to lose. Maybe he's just that crazy, I don't know. But it just seems, I don't want to say, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say unrealistic, but it's quite the risk for him to take, I'm just saying. My problem with how the movie handled this scene is that we don't even see Coriolanus poison the bottle. Unless you've read the book, this scene just looks like Highbottom having a good old-fashioned overdose. It just seems like an oversight. That being said, I saw another person's video about this scene, and they said that Highbottom's nose was bleeding as he was dying in the same way that the poisoned tribute's nose did. So maybe I'm just stupid or something, because number 1, I don't remember that. And number 2, I still feel like it would have been nice for us to actually see him put the poison in the bottle. So, those are my thoughts on A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I honestly thought I was going to like this movie a lot more than I did. It was okay, it wasn't too bad. If I had to rank the books, I would definitely put this book above the Mockingjay books, but I don't know if I would put it above Hunger Games and Catching Fire, I don't know. But the movie, I might even put the movie at the bottom. I don't know, it might be better than the Mockingjay movies. I wasn't a huge fan of the Mockingjay movies. But, I don't know, I just feel there was so much more in the book, obviously the book is better. Everyone says the book is always better. Maybe if I hadn't read the book, I would have liked it more. My stepdad watched it and he didn't read the book and he thought it was a good movie, so I don't know, maybe I was just spoiled by the book. The movie did have a lot to live up to, and 2.5 hours, like over 2.5 hours, is already a pretty long runtime, so I understand why they weren't able to fit more in. Having said that, though, you know, maybe they could have fit more important stuff in, some more world building, and some more character development if they hadn't added those action scenes that were gratuitous and unnecessary. But anyway, thank you for watching the video, and please subscribe if you liked it. I'm sure this video won't be my last. A peace.